Tony Curtis was a big star in Hollywood. He's best known for his parts in Spartacus and Some Like It Hot. But the man often mixed his work and home life, which turned out to be a big mistake. He liked younger women, which made things even more difficult for him. His friends and family were generally unhappy with how he conducted himself. He married 6 different women and had 6 children over his 85 years. As a result, there were a lot of incidents and relationships. If you didn't see him in his prime or never heard these facts, now's the time to learn them, but they could shock you. Being hungry as a kid. His name was Bernard Schwartz, and he was born in the Bronx in 1925. It did happen in his dad's clothing shop, and things were hard for the family. Someone told him and his brothers they had to go to a shelter because they didn't have any food. A sad childhood. It had been about 5 years since Curtis's brother was sent to a home. A truck killed his brother. It was 12 years old when the boy died. Then there was more sadness because his family had a lot of people with mental illness, which put family members in bad situations. The family is plagued by mental illness. This family had a hard time, but Tony's mom had it even worse. Over the years, her mental problems got worse and worse, and they showed up in horrible ways. She hit her kids a lot, which led to a disturbing ending. His mom was hurt. Curtis's mom was told she had schizophrenia after another breakdown. His brother Robert found out he had the same mental illness as her and was put in a hospital because of it. She went to care for it. Keeping his assets safe. He was tough on the Bronx streets because his home life was so scary. He used to be in a gang, but he covered his face when they fought. Some say he was psychic because he knew he was going to be a movie star, but we'll never know for sure. The agent finds him. When Curtis was driving a truck and taking acting lessons, a talent agent saw how good he could be. Her uncle, David O. Selznick, was a big name in Hollywood and produced Gone with the Wind. Tony became famous very quickly. Getting a new name. When Bernard Schwartz went to Hollywood, he changed his name to Anthony Curtis. Through Selznick, he got a deal with Universal that gave him small roles in movies. It was Curtis's dream to be a big star, but he liked the attention from girls. How to date a legend. Monroe and Curtis dated a long time before they were in Some Like It Hot. He remembered going to the beach and having parties with a woman, but they weren't a great match. Other women liked the man too. Getting to know a movie goddess. At that time, Janet Leigh was one of the biggest and most beautiful stars. She was in the scary shower scene, and Curtis was glad when he started dating her. They wanted to get married because they were the it thing in Hollywood. The very big problem. Universal International made it so that Curtis couldn't marry Leigh because he had a deal with them. They knew that he would no longer be a hero, and they wanted him to be with Piper Laurie. They made threats against him, but he handled it well. Getting away. The angry directors were too much for Leigh and Curtis to handle, so they ran away to Connecticut in 1951. In the small gathering, Jerry Lewis was there to watch it. Then they came back to deal with the reaction. Gold in the movies. He didn't lose his job because he jumped. It did help both of them. They made each other better when they were together, and people loved seeing them. That being said, Curtis would soon start to fall apart. People having fun laughing. Curtis started to play comedic parts, and people loved his sense of humor. But in Son of Alibaba, he had a terrible accent. He talked like he was in the Bronx instead of Persia in one scene. He took it very badly because it was an insult. A lot of events that change lives. At first, Curtis was a big deal in Hollywood, and a lot of stars were making a lot of movies every year. But he was more interested in having a family. As soon as they got married, Curtis and Leigh had Jamie Lee and Kelly, but he wasn't the best dad. Taking part in a classic. At that time, Curtis played a cross-dressing character in Some Like It Hot. His work changed a lot because of this movie, but things weren't always great. Marilyn Monroe had a nervous breakdown and cried non-stop before the shots were filmed. Putting down a co-star. Tony and Marilyn had to kiss in one scene in Some Like It Hot. The video looked great, but he said he'd rather kiss Hitler than her. At the time, it was a bit of a scandal, and Monroe was very angry about it. Makes his wife look bad. Curtis and Leigh were having problems in their marriage. One of the issues was that she thought she was better than him. She'd been poor as a child too, but not as much. She thought he was rude because he broke a glass while talking to Ethel Merman and got mad about it. Always cheating. Tony was a playa, which meant he turned his back on his wife Janet. He was at the Playboy Mansion a lot, and Natalie Wood was said to be his girlfriend. For the same reason, he said he loved Gloria DeHaven, even though he was married at the time. His dark spot. Being married to a Hollywood star made him feel paranoid. He was so sure she was cheating on him that he called her all the time to see how she was doing. Then he thought she was sleeping with his good friend Frank Sinatra. Caused her to cheat. He was always suspicious and angry, which is what brought Sinatra and Leigh together. Some people think it wouldn't have happened if Tony hadn't said they were doing it without telling him. In 1962, they got a divorce. The scene that caused a stir. Tony had a lot to do with his part in Spartacus. It had a lot of action, and a racy scene shocked a lot of people. Curtis and Laurence Olivier's roles make it seem like they liked each other in the play. Taking on the producers. They didn't want to film the bath scene at all because they were sure that the censors would cut it. But Olivier and Curtis pushed to keep that clip in. They shot it, but they didn't record sound, so it was never shown to the public. Wonderful rebounder. After he and Janet Leigh got divorced, Curtis didn't waste any time. He dated Christine Kaufman the following year. He was 38 years old while she was only 17. He seemed to want to get away from Leigh, even though she would hurt his business. Getting his reputation ruined. People stopped liking Curtis after he and Leigh split up, and the fact that he married a teen didn't help. He was Hollywood's sweetheart, but now that he had a young wife, he looked sleazy and creepy. Not any more laughter. There were a lot of comedies that Curtis was in that didn't do well in the 1960s. He wasn't the best at making love comedies anymore, but he stopped watching dramas and started watching more comedies, so he had to change. What a scary part. Curtis stopped acting in comedies and turned into a scary part. The subject of the Boston Strangler didn't sit well with critics, but they liked how he played the serial killer. He was doing better and now had more important work to do. Giving up his wife for. He married Leslie Allen, who was 20 years younger than him after he and Kaufman split up. Even though the split was over, he did this to keep the party going. It looked like he was getting divorced again and again. Getting away with it. She moved back to Germany with her 2 children, Allegra and Alexandra, after getting separated from Kaufman. He didn't want to be away from them, so he took them from her and brought them to the U.S. without her permission. Leaving the children behind. Before Kaufman found out that things weren't going well for Curtis, she let him have the kids. He and his new wife hadn't made the house safe for kids. He was hooked on drugs and she drank a lot. Falling a lot. By this time, Curtis was a failed actor with a terrible drug problem. During the day, he worked on low-budget projects and drank and took pills to dull his pain. Because of this, Kaufman told him to send her children back and fix his life. Looking for help. Curtis split up with his new wife, Allen, after the death of his children and went to rehab. Though he was aware that the Betty Ford Treatment Center was only for famous and wealthy people, he went there anyway. He was only hooked on marriage now. Getting married once more. Curtis met Andrea Savio when he was ready to find love again. He was 59 years old, while she was only 21. By some strange luck, Savio had played the same part in Bus Stop as Marilyn Monroe. Getting a new MO. Curtis got married again because he no longer felt loved by his fans. He was over Savio, but he liked young actresses. so he chose to hire a lawyer. He thought things would work out if his wife wasn't in show business. Lisa Deutsch, on the other hand, was married for only 18 months. Interested in younger women. Tony Curtis was aware that he liked younger women and liked to date them. He joked that he wouldn't be with a woman old enough to be his wife, which meant he lived up to that idea. Tragic family. Nicholas Allen, one of Tony's kids, died of drugs around the same time he was going through his 5th divorce. Curtis said it was terrible to lose a son because he was only 23 years old. Not a good dad. The Halloween star, Jamie Lee Curtis, told some scary things about her dad. She told him about his drug problems and said that she and her dad had shared illegal drugs. It took her 10 years to stop drinking. The last chance to love. He married Jill Vandenberg 6 times. She was 46 years younger than him. She was actually about the same age as Jamie Lee. She used to be a model, but now she likes horseback riding. She and her boyfriend started a foster home for horses that had been beaten or ignored. His admitted sin. He wrote a book called The Making of Some Like It Hot. He dropped a shock when he said he slept with Marilyn Monroe while the movie was being made. They were both married at the time, so he kept it a secret. How sad Marilyn was. In the book, Curtis wrote that he and Monroe told Monroe's husband about their affair, and Monroe told her husband that she was pregnant with Tony's child. Sadly, she lost the baby, which happened a lot of the time. She'd never give birth to a child. His demise. He lived 2 more years after making David and Fatima and died of a heart attack in 2010. The event took place in his home when he was 85 years old. Even though he was dead, his family still had to deal with issues for many years afterwards. If you've watched the video till here, that means you've enjoyed the video. Subscribe. Don't forget to turn on the notifications bell icon.